If you were stranded on a deserted island
Uh-huh.
and you could bring one movie, one album, and
Oh,
one book,
oh.
what would they be?
Does audiobook count?
Yes.
Okay.
We're all about accessibility around.
Well, my movie would probably be The Big Lebowski.
Nice.
My
Nice choice.
album, you know how I feel about the miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
Yeah, good choice. Good choices.
Though, though, Rumors is not a perfect album in my opinion, but no, it's going to be the miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna land there.
Yeah. And my book would probably be like some kind of survivalist guide.
Smart. That's very
Yeah.
practical of you.
Well, this is the thing. You know about my you know about me and books. You know, we have a tough relationship.
Fair.
So
Complicated question. Little
reframe.
loaded. Little loaded. Got it.
How about you?
God, this is
Well, you
hard.
did it to yourself, cats.
I
This is
know.
your idea, so
Um, you chose the Big Lebowski. That is a admirable selection.
thank you.
Mine, if we're choosing right now in this moment, the movie I would take with me would
Step up
probably.
four.
I thought about four. Four is a good one.
Oh, it is going to be a dance movie.
Oh, 100% it's a dance movie.
Okay, I'm so excited. Keep going.
I think it is. Hold on, let me get the title right. Honey, Rise Up and Dance. Now that
I'm
is.
going to go ahead and venture a guess that this might be the most. I'm not surprised at all. Knowing you as well as I do, I'm not surprised. I think that our listeners might be surprised.
Yeah, I think people on the internet are learning a little bit about me today. Back to Honey. Now, yes, also news for some people that I am a closet dance movie aficionado, expert, I don't know,
Enthusiast.
enthusiast. Now, um there's the Honey that most people are familiar with, the OG with Jessica Alba. It's good. It holds. Up okay. But Honey, Rise Up and Dance, which is, let's just say it's worth watching. I would say it's worth watching repeatedly.
Knowing you, I do know that you think that it's worth repeating.
Okay, so that's Honey. That's the movie. Rise Up
Okay.
and Dance, just to be clear. Not the original. The album, I'm pretty sure that it is going to be right now White Lighter from Typhoon. And the book, this is hard. This is really hard for me. You know what it is? It's Haruki Murakami's 1Q84.
Okay. Okay. I have seen this book on your bookshelf.
Yes, you probably
Don't
have.
know anything about it.
Takes up a lot of space. It's like 1,000 pages.
See, this is a good choice because it would last a long,
This is what I'm
long
saying.
time.
This is what
Yeah.
I'm saying. It's compelling. Like, I'd never want to put it down, even though I've read it twice.
Mm.
And it's 1,000 pages, and it's like surprising. And
Okay. I'm second guessing my answers,
I was
but I'm
just
just
gonna
going to
say,
go
do you
with them.
feel content with your
No,
answers?
I'm never going to feel content with the answers to this question. This is a setup for discontentment. You're basically asking if you lived a really not content life, how would you make the most of it?
How would you make the most of it? I mean, I'm not comparing the Coen brothers to whoever made Honey, Rise Up and Dance.
I
Let's
know.
be
I know.
clear. Okay,
But
please continue.
okay, but here is the tie-in to this episode. We are rethinking the idea of what makes something valuable.
Look at how smart you are. You're such a business coach thing to do, right there, by the way.
Reframe. Right when you didn't think we were talking about business. Oh, surprise. I think the overarching theme of this conversation is rethinking what makes something valuable now. We've all heard the idea of giving value. If you haven't heard that, then you probably avoided the dude bros.
Mm.
Good for you. However, the like go-to thing that people talk about often in the online business world and the online marketing world is like you have to make sure that you give value. So you like hook people in and then you give value and then you give more value and then you give more value and then you make the ask. And we think about like what is the value of a specific offer, oftentimes in terms of how it solves someone's problem. I don't think that that's wrong, but I do think that we overlook the value of something being easier for us.
Mm.
We overlook the value of things being entertaining.
Mm.
We overlook the value, like there's all kinds of other things that I think are really important. And right now, at a time when everyone is so burnt out and our capacity is so low, I think that it's even more important to be thinking about the value of just making things simple.
Yeah, when you're saying this, it's making me think about the conversation that you and I had recently about offering a freebie or a lead magnet to get people's email addresses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, aren't people just going to give us their email addresses if they want to hear from us? And wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
I much rather like but I'm thinking that there was a time where providing something valuable in exchange for the email address was it felt like it was the only way or like
Yeah.
it was sold to us as the only way.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to remember that like a lot of us came into this work and we're trying to figure out like, wait, okay, everyone's talking about an email list. Email list, what? Wait, okay, so how do I do that? And then it's like everyone's saying this is how you do it, and so you just do it. And now, as we're further into that, I think that we are seeing, first of all, like the way that people will just grab the thing and unsubscribe. Second of all, the fact that I think that there's a lot of value in consent at this point, and I think that our um, audience really values consent. And so if you are trying to me, like, I think that something that I can access without having to give you my email, and then I can decide for myself if I want to give you my email after that, to me, that just shows the value of what you do even more, because I don't feel like I'm a object for you to like manipulate.
Mm. Yeah, this is also making me. I'm having a light bulb moment, and I'm going to preface this by saying this might not be as revelatory for you as it is for me.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I'm like, oh.
Actually, maybe it is step up 3.
No, it would not be step up 3. Let's be very clear. Step up 3 doesn't come to the island. No.
Okay. Okay.
Step up 2, maybe.
Great.
Okay, but what I was gonna say was it's suddenly occurring to me. It's like I didn't see the forest through the trees. It's suddenly occurring to me that online business has only been a thing for so long.
Right.
The internet is still relatively new to the human experience.
Right.
So online business is still relatively new too. So it makes sense. And as I'm hearing you say it, like it's like, oh, how do I start? Okay, I guess I need a newsletter list. This was my experience, by the way. By the way, I managed other people's newsletter lists, right, for years. And then when I started my business formally, right, in
Mm-hmm.
2018, I was like, listening to marketing podcasts like I didn't know what to do. And one
Yeah.
of the things they said was start a newsletter. How do you get people to subscribe to a newsletter and grow the list from scratch? Offer something that they want, right? And I'm like, oh, it makes sense actually that that was the starting point and the
Totally.
foundational strategy for a whole era of online businesses.
Totally.
And we're in a new era.
Yeah.
I'm saying the same thing I think I've said in the trailer and in episode 1, but I'm just saying it differently now because my understanding of the context feels different. I'm like, when we say reimagining online business, part of it is like, okay, we're in a new era. How do we reorient to this era?
Yeah. I mean, it's the way that anything develops is it usually starts out with the best that we've got, and then we find out that we can do better later. Or either it's misguided or it works because of the environment. I mean, like, listen, you and I both recently watched Pam and Tommy.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
quality programming.
I actually thought it was really good, but
Oh,
then I had,
I'm really serious,
yeah, it
actually.
was really good. And then I had really mixed feelings about it after I found out that Pamela Anderson really didn't want it made. Anyways, you see the way that that was one of the very first online videos. And you see the way that it was distributed. And it was just like, all it needed to happen is it just needed to be accessible online.
Yeah,
That was all that needed to happen. And once everyone realized that everyone could access it,
that was
right?
it.
It just like caught on like wildfire. Then things changed, like, right? And so, like with anything, things are going to change. And we are definitely in a place right now where I think that a huge part of I think the value of what we can provide our audience is to make things simple, make things easy for them to integrate or digest, make it easy for them to find what they're looking for,
Yes.
make things feel more easeful than the other stuff that they're having to deal with when they're on the internet.
Yes, like
Right?
less clicks to get to the thing, less
Yeah.
things that you have to enter to
Yeah.
get to the thing you're trying to access, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera.
And I
Yes.
think that before, right, this is not a new concept in terms of less clicks. We want people to,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
That's not a new concept in itself. It is new to think of it as to center the way that it improves things for our audience versus centering trapping people. Because before it was about like, oh no, you don't want people to have to do an extra click, because then that's one more time that they might leave the page. Not super helpful for me as somebody that's never felt right to me.
Mm.
And so I'm not going to do it. If I
Mm-hmm.
can reframe, though, what we're seeing right now and think about things in terms of the person's experience on the other side of the screen, it makes things easier for me and makes things easier for them.
Not overcomplicating it. That's
Yeah.
what we're getting at.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a lot of work to make things. Sometimes what seems not complicated to you is really complicated on the other end. And then it takes a bunch of work for you to go in and make and actually streamline it. Right. So there's a few areas that we want to talk about. The one that I would really like to start with is one that you and I have talked about quite a bit lately. We've had a bunch of conversations about what kind of content works.
Yeah.
Lots of conversations about carousels, because you are sort of like the king of carousels,
Oh,
I
yes.
think.
Yes.
Carousel king. Um,
Yeah, I did just pop my collar. Yes.
so there's been a bunch of times where you and I have talked about, you've been like, I have thoughts on this thing that you just posted. I want to give you thoughts on that. Or we've talked about different pieces of content and you've been like, okay, but it's wrong though. And I'm like, okay, tell me what it is though. Like, I'm trying to get in your brain because I'm trying to figure out what it is that you do with your content that makes it really engaging. And what we've come to is that a lot of it is just about making things accessible.
Yeah. And I just want to acknowledge too that, like, first of all, not all of my carousel slides are like jumping off, right? And I want to say that up front. In part because people are going to engage differently with something about the word women with an X than they are about a carousel slide that starts with the title that says marketing doesn't have to mean manipulation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm just saying that one of the things that I think I'm seeing or on in content in general is that we have very limited time to get people's attention. It's almost like I have to train my brain to think in newspaper headlines. What is going to get people to stop and actually read the thing I'm trying to say? It's okay. So if I think about that right now and our attention spans and the fact that we are also tired and burnt out, and then actually scrolling on the internet or even reading my emails, it's like I'm not fully present all the time, if I'm honest, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So how do I get people's attention when they're doing something that they're not fully present to? Well, yeah, it is like getting the title right, or the subject line in an email, right? And when I say right, I'm putting that in quotes. I do think there are ways to do it wrong, to your point, you know?
Uh-huh.
And sometimes that is about the wording. Like today, when I was editing a post, I had like four yous or versions of your in one sentence. And I was like, okay, you probably can get rid of some of those. So some of
Hmm.
this is an editing conversation. Get
Hmm.
rid of the superfluous words and language that you don't need. Say the thing in less words, right? Be
Hmm.
concise. Part of it is a design thing. And when we say access or accessibility, I am thinking about disability access, but I'm also thinking about our overstimulated nervous systems, our overstimulated brains, and getting people to access content amidst that overstimulation. And to me, overcomplicating the design,
Hmm.
trying to make something that's quote on brand at the expense of saying the thing in as easy to read text, font, and colors as possible, right?
Hmm.
It's like, what are we prioritizing? Are we prioritizing the grid aesthetic? Or like, are we prioritizing graphic design because for so long the online business world taught us that our graphic design needed to be on point, right? Or are we prioritizing the fact that like actually we don't need more graphic design fanciness right now? What we need is to get the thing out there and be as like easy to read and easy to digest as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's like so much in what you just said. I think that one of the most recent points that you just made or distinctions to think about is um, graphic design is not about what you think looks nice. We're having to, those of us who are like just figuring out how to sell shit online are wearing every hat. We're not designers, many of us. Some of us are, most of us aren't. So we're trying to create the content, do quality work, also be a designer, also be a web, like whatever the fuck, and whatever. We're trying to do all of it. And oftentimes what I see is, and I've totally done it too, is we're looking for what we think is aesthetically pleasing and not thinking about what is the point of what we're designing right now and how can we make it functional.
Yes, and to me that relates to not just graphic design, but like the way we overthink or overcomplicate showing up in the first place. And I'm talking about a business name, a brand identity, like like don't. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if it's one piece of advice that I can offer anyone who's thinking like, oh, I need a business name and I need a brand identity package, a logo, a color palette, a font selection, etc. And I'm not saying those things aren't valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people I'm like, go work with this person who helps you do that in a really
Yeah.
powerful way, you know?
Yeah.
Um, what I am saying is, stop it. You don't need those things
Yeah.
in order to put your work out there in the world. And in fact, if you're thinking first I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do this and then it's going to look like this because everything's going to be dialed in. I have the business name, the LLC, the logo, the color palette, and now I'm ready to share my work in the world. Guess what? We're still going to want to know who you are and what you care about.
And also after you start actually sharing your shit, you're going to realize it was all wrong
Yeah,
because you weren't actually out there doing the work and having the conversations. And so you need to be doing that in order to workshop what it is that you're even trying to do.
right? This all goes back to the like larger thing, which is if you're not clear in what you're doing or saying beyond the logo or beyond the graphic design aesthetic, you're gonna be background noise.
So, okay, so there's like a lot in what we're saying here. I'm wondering if maybe we can break things down point by point
Yeah, let's do it.
in terms of, and again, like this is not us saying this is the right way to be creating content right now. What it is us saying there was once something that worked really well, which was creating things that look visually appealing for an app like Instagram, which was designed to be for photos. It's changed. We are seeing that people's attention spans have changed. we've seen that a lot of people are going into a certain aesthetic that they like, and then it sort of all blends. We're seeing all sorts of things have changed. And I think that what you have helped me understand is that if you take two pieces of content, which have the exact same substance, side by side, there's certain things that actually make one usually more engaging than the other. And it might not be what you think. It might not be about it looking pretty, right?
Yes.
So the first piece I think that we could talk about is not making it look pretty. I sent you a carousel recently that I wanted your thoughts on. And this was before I was able to really fully integrate what you had been saying to me about design. And I really thought that you were going to be like, you were going to make comments about the actual substance of the content. And instead you were like, you need to bold this font. You need to make the line spacing a little bit further apart. You need to change the background color a little bit more so it's higher contrast. And I was like, but it doesn't look as good. And like didn't want to do it. But the point was like, just make it easy for people to read it so that it doesn't get lost.
I really think that's where we're at. And I think that so many of us have been and I don't mean to say that we've been overcomplicating it. I think you're right. I think that there was a time and place for like fancy design aesthetics to get people's attention. And I think we're in a different time. And the way to get people's attention now is to make it as digestible as possible. I think, and also, aren't they saying that people are spending like a fraction of a time now watching reels than they were originally when reels first launched?
Probably.
So what I'm saying is like our attention spans and brains are literally changing, right?
Yes.
According to what the internet is doing and what we're being exposed to. So I think right now the way to reach people is actually to use big, simple fonts, right? Simple color palettes. If there are design aesthetics, they're simple. They're small. They're minimal. It's not, and I'm not saying, look, there are people out there who have huge accounts, who are doing great things with their content and their design, and it's still working for them.
Right.
And I'm also, and you and I talk about queer sex therapy a lot. And in fact, most of my friends mention queer sex therapy as if Casey and all of us we're all like buddies now. I bet there are queer people all over who are like, yeah, Casey, we're on a first name basis with Casey. Casey Tanner, I think is the name, right?
It's a great account. I love
the
content is inspiring me all the time.
All the time. And guess what? She is getting it done easy, right? Yep. There's a simple carousel site template that they use. And then there's, the kind of template that Casey uses for more personal shares that is super straightforward and easy.
So simple. It's literally just, she takes one photo of herself. She puts a colored box somewhere on the photo with text in it. It is a solid like white box or whatever color box with just text in it.
With just text.
And the entire carousel is the same photo over and over and over again, and just the text in that box changes.
And I'm looking at Casey at Queer Sex Therapy's profile right now, and it's like, really, there are 3 or 4 types of content that this account is rotating through.
Yeah.
And over time, I imagine with the support of their team, Casey has figured out what and how to share this content, and it works. And what I'm saying is, let's look at what Casey's doing, what this team is doing, because simple fonts, big fonts, simple aesthetics, minimal, right?
Yeah.
Not overcomplicating. This is a source of great inspiration to me. The other person I want to highlight too is Toy Marie, Toi. Marie, who I know I've referenced because I'm also like, wow, that's another person who I think is just like, the content is just not overly complicated.
Yeah.
It's easy to digest, and which makes it easier to share, which makes it more inclined to be shared. You know what I'm saying? And anyways, yeah.
Yeah. And I'll say too, like when I look at an account like Toy's account, or honestly your account, like at a profile, and I see that mostly what I'm getting is really straightforward text that's easy for me to read that indicates what I'm going to find in that post or is really like hard hitting and potent. I see an account that has something to actually say, something to actually offer me, and something of value. When I go onto a profile that looks aesthetically pleasing, which I'm going to be on, I am not criticizing anyone who has done this, but there is a reason why I did not go with the 9 grid trend. And it is because when I see 9 grids where the whole 9 grid was designed to look like this image that's like, I don't think that it's a bad thing, but it is not nearly as engaging to me because what I see is someone who basically tried to design a web page on their Instagram. Fine, but like I would just go to your website if I wanted that. The only time that I have ever opened one of those posts is to see what they're doing because I'm studying their marketing.
100%. And I'm like so excited by the 9 grid conversation because no, I don't think it's an effective marketing strategy. And I also think that there's something to be said about using that if you don't want to be active on Instagram.
Totally.
In which case, being considerate about the graphic design and the way the squares, blah, 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 all of that, super valuable. I would recommend folks like that put something in their profile that says, like, not active here, you know?
Totally.
Like, contact me through my website or
Like
whatever.
watch stories, or there's some accounts that I know have the 9 grid, and then when they post reels though constantly, but they don't post them to their feed, they only post them to reels.
Something to be said about all of that. And yeah, a part of what I'm also hearing you say when it's like, okay, I land on somebody's profile and this is the vibe I'm getting because they've spent all this time investing in graphic design and the aesthetic and curating and blah blah blah. It's like, where's your voice though?
Exactly.
'Cause
Exactly.
that's what we need actually, is like a quick access to your voice. We're not going to get that through your design aesthetic actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you are so actually I want to make one point, go back to one point, and then I have
Do
a
it.
further point about this. An alternative to doing a highly designed 9 grid is to come up with 9 things that you want to say and have 9 posts that are pillars of your work, and the title slides
Smart.
to them are really obvious about what you're going to find in them.
Smart.
That to me is going to make people open them and engage with it so much more than something that just looks nice. And I think there was a time where looking nice mattered on Instagram. I think it's gone. Hence the rise of the notes screenshots. The other thing is, there's certain accounts where it might make sense to approach things totally differently. For example, you are a luxury interior design service. Yeah. Make your grid really aesthetic because like what you're providing, you want like your brands to come through and through. So that makes sense. But to your point, know what you're about, know what you're trying to do, and then make that the center of what you're trying to do. And if you don't have the kind of business where something being aesthetically pleasing, like I think also about like professional organizing services. Yeah, make it look pristine. Sure, I get it. Most of us don't need to do it though.
Yeah, it's neat because I'm thinking about Rauta, and we'll include links to all these folks in the show notes. But I'm thinking about Rauta because Rauta, it specializes in website and brand design, and so when you go to her profile on Instagram or her website or her newsletter, it is well designed, right? There's thought and intentionality around the design and the aesthetic. Of course there is. That's her work. What also comes through in her profile, in her marketing, in her newsletter, in the design are her values and her voice.
So, the other part of this, aside from just the design, is also the fact that, to your point, people's attention spans are really limited right now. If you're not going to impact someone in some way within the first couple of seconds that they see something that you're putting out there, you are probably going to lose them.
Yeah, and this is going to go for like probably every form of marketing there is right now, right?
Yeah, I think so.
In
Yeah.
terms of content marketing, like newsletter, social media, the caption, the reel, the carousel, right? A YouTube video. If you're not going to get people's attention, you're going to lose them. We're going to move on so fast.
It goes hand in hand with what we were just saying because I will tell you, as a dyslexic person, if I see a big block of text, I'm not reading it.
Can you be more clear when you say a big block of text?
Yeah, I think of like maybe it is a notes screenshot, and the title slide will be like an entire paragraph, all in body-sized font that takes up the entire square.
Got it.
I might read the beginning of the sentence, the first sentence. If that does not hook me, I'm not doing it. And I don't think that this is only true for people like me who have trouble with reading.
Yep.
I think that this is true for all of us right now because if we were to read every single thing that was put in front of our faces, we would do nothing with our time except be reading content. And so we have to filter things out.
Yes.
So part of it is that design, like you were saying, large font. It's easy for people to read. But what are the things that you think about when you think about what to put on a title slide? Because you have strong opinions about title slides. And by the way, I think also when we say title slide, you could also say subject line.
Subject
you could say
line.
Blog post title.
Yep.
Right? It's not just about Instagram, but we're talking about Instagram because that's where we tend to hang out.
Yeah. To me, a title slide is the headline of a New York Times article. I want to be the New York Times the way I actually think of that the New York Times should be, which is to not manipulate people, but to tell them something very briefly that is going to be covered more in the content if they engage further. Now, to tell them that thing briefly and potently, like, I don't know what the formula is for that. I know I'm constantly trying to figure it out myself and that I'm trying different techniques all the time. I do know that if we put, this is to your point, dyslexic or not, if we put too much text on the first thing that people see on Instagram, unless it's like, I don't know, there are exceptions to this, of course, but I just think it's gotta be short and to the point. And I'm not talking about 3 ways to, you know? I'm talking about like, what's the statement that you're making with this piece of content? What is the thesis argument? What is the takeaway? Put that first. Sometimes you want to put it at the end, but that's the thing that you want people to see so that they read through and understand why you're saying it. Does that make sense? And then
Totally.
and then beyond that, like, yeah, make it as simple design wise as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of am hearing you say, like, don't bury the lead. Like, if
Yes.
you are going to try to, right, there was a sales technique that was very, very widely taught years ago, which was, right, you want to hook people with one thing and then kind of lead them down this trail, right? Like you kind of hook them with something. Maybe it's a personal story. Maybe it's something that makes them think, ooh, I want to know that, right? But you're not actually going to give them that. What you're really going to do is you're going to kind of just follow that, like you're going to branch off of that and start saying things that are tangentially related, basically. And then eventually you lead them to the ultimate point of what it is that you have to say.
Yeah.
Now, can that work now? Maybe, I guess. But I think that our best bet now is to just take the main point of what it is that you have to say, put it at the beginning so that people can decide, do they give a shit? And is that one of the few things that they're actually going to read of all the things that are coming in front of their face? And trust that then if you have good content beyond that, it's going to do well.
Yes, make the main point first and make it easy to digest. And then at the end, That's the call to action. But
Right.
you've made the case for the call to action in the content leading up to it, right?
Right.
And the title slide of a carousel or whatever the hell the piece of content is has told people whether or not they want to actually engage in it because you're telling them what point you're making with the content,
Right.
right?
Right.
I think that's the. I don't know. I'm curious. I'm curious what folks think. I'm curious if this is just the what I'm finding to be effective, and then I look at other pieces of content and I see patterns and themes, and
I don't think that it's just what you're finding to be. I think that it makes total sense given the situation that we're in right now. And I also think that we're always going to say over and over again, you need to experiment and find what works for you and what works for your audience. Maybe doesn't replicate for you with your audience for some weird reason or another.
I also think this relates to doing business with humans rather than the internet, with people rather than the internet, because
Totally.
at this point in time, this many years into Instagram being a tool for online businesses, the graphic design aesthetic shit now lands as marketing.
Totally.
Explicit, salesy marketing. If you are going to create a carousel slide that is like all polished and branded, it feels like marketing now. So, how do we make our content feel like humans made it?
Right. And how do we there was a time where the way to stand out was to make something look really nice
Yeah.
and designed, and now because everything looks that way, actually the thing that stands out is the stuff that's more simple and to the point.
I think this is true.
Yeah. Okay, and then finally, the thing that you talked about, but I think that it's an important point to make, is just this. This is something that is not new, but I think right now it matters more than it even did before. Saying things in as few words as possible. So once you know what the main point is, like, how can you say that in a way that is not like, that just gets to the point? And this is where I'm like, people, sure that you experience this too, people love to try to find the exact right way to describe what they do, and ultimately they land on words that feel good to them, but they don't actually make sense
And they
to
don't mean
us.
anything to
They
us.
don't.
Yeah. This is why I'm like, stop trying to come up with the right business name because your business name is going to mean nothing to me.
So the other things where I think this is really true right now, that we need to think about the value of just making things easy. I'm always thinking about how people find out about how to work with you.
Yeah, you're thinking about how do people come into actual space with me to work
Right.
with me,
Right.
and what is that process like? What are the spaces for them in a way that makes this all easy?
Right, right. And I think that it makes a huge difference right now, in differentiating you from other people. If it's easy for me to figure out how to work with somebody, if it's easy for me to figure out if it's the right space for me, I'm gonna go with that over the person who I need to do a whole bunch of research to try to figure that out. If I can't figure out how to like work with you really, really easily, and if I can't easily figure out, if you have a bunch of offers and I can't figure out which one is for me, you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose me.
Yeah, I'm worried that I'm doing this actually sometimes. I'm worried that I have too many marketing programs running at the same time and that people don't know where they belong. Even, sometimes
Well,
yeah.
here's the thing though. So there are some people who, and this is what I was about to say, is like in some cases, it's like you can't tell which offer is for you, and so you end up just reaching out to the person because you're not scared to do that. And I think that something that is really important for us to be thinking about is how it feels for people when they see the doorway into working with you, and the amount of hesitation that you're creating by not being clear about what's going to happen when they walk through that door. Because so many people have been burned, or like in a high pressure conversation, or they don't trust the person. I think that if you can create a connection with people and an actual relationship with people, it takes so much pressure off of all of this, because people will feel comfortable asking you the question. I've had people come up to me and
Yep.
ask me like, "You're selling this thing, but I think that it's for this, and I don't know if I fit. Like, what do you think?" Right? There's other people who they look really legit, maybe. All of their stuff looks super polished. Everything is created just so, and I'm really intrigued by the sales page and whatever. I get to the place where I can then click the button to walk through the door, and I don't know how much it costs. I don't know who I'm talking to when I book
Yep.
this call because it
Yep.
just brought me to book a call. It didn't bring me to check out or anything like that. I don't know who I'm going to be talking to. I don't know what this call is even for. Is this a sales call? Is this what I'm not doing it? And I just am not. I have zero patience for it. I'm not going to do that ever again. And I think a lot of people are in that situation. And I think that when we think about how to make things easy for people, part of it is the feeling of how easy is it for someone to make a decision? It's easier for somebody to make a decision when they have all of the information that they're looking for right up front, and there's not a whole bunch of distractions with all of this shit that you're trying to distract them with because you don't want to just say what the fucking price is and say what's going to happen on the call and say maybe why you have the call, you know?
So when you think, okay, I want to put you on the hot seat. Like I want you to say, like, what are the things you think folks need to be focusing on right now in order to make all of this easier, clearer, more effective?
First of all, actually think through your offers and make sure that you even know. If you don't know who your offers are for, it is going to be confusing to other people. If it's confusing to you, no one else is going to be able to figure it out. So if you have a bunch of different kinds of people that you work with, take the time. We're going to talk about this when we talk about offers later on, but take the time to sit down and think about how to serve those different types of people, what those different types of people actually need, and create containers specifically for that so that when people land on you and your profile or your website and they're intrigued, they actually see a place that is for them. So that's the first thing. The second thing I think is I think that the days of trying to create a homepage that is all about trying to get people into a freebie or trying to get people into the top of a funnel.
Yep.
Can some people do it who have a huge audience and are playing a numbers game? Absolutely. Is it going to work for most of us as smaller online service-based businesses? I don't think so. I think the best way to do it right now is to be really straightforward about who you are. Just say it. Who are you? What do you do? What are the ways that people can work with you? Make it really obvious. I think that the other thing to think about is being transparent with people. So when we talk about an easy and straightforward kind of intake process, I think telling people the price makes it easier for them to make a decision. Telling people, having a well thought out FAQ section on your sales pages that answers the questions that you know that people have. There was a time where we used FAQ sections to quote unquote overcome objections. And it was thought of in terms of what are the things that will make people hesitate and how can you address those in the FAQ section. I don't love that. And also, I think the reframe is actually really minor, which is what are the questions that you know people are going to have? Answer them honestly in the FAQ section. Just
Brilliant.
put the information there. And disclosing also if you do have a sales call or like an alignment call or a discovery call or whatever, I think this is important. I also think if you are selling like workshops or something where you're asking people to come into a digital or a virtual space with you, I think that telling people what they can expect it to be like makes it easier for them. Telling people, there was once a time, I don't have this up anymore, but I do say it like oftentimes in my marketing when I'm like sending out emails and I invite people to book a call with me or in my posts. But there was a time where anytime that anyone went to book a call with me, rather than it going to my scheduler, it went to a page that said, this is exactly what's going to happen if you book a call with me. And it literally told them what my calls look, the structure of the calls, and what's in it for me. This is something that my coach, my business coach, Lena West, who I worked with in the past, was taught me. And like, I think that she's so right, which is like, if something seems too good to be true, we're at a point right now where people are like, okay, but why would you want me to get on a call with you if you're not actually going to pressure me? Because what's in that for you? If you really were willing to sit down with me and just answer my questions, like, and my curiosities, I don't understand why you would want to waste your time doing that. So if you're finding that, I don't think we all need to do this, but I do think that if you're finding that like people are interested, but they're just not taking that next step, there's a lot of value in telling people exactly what to expect so that it's easier for them to make a decision about whether or not they actually want to talk to you.
I mean, this is also just making me think about how sometimes the obvious thing in our marketing is right in front of our noses, but we haven't seen it. And not just in our marketing, obviously, but I'm just thinking like, if I don't talk about this one-on-one offer that I have or whatever it is, and it just lives on my website, and I hope people that will find it because I posted about it once, months ago. But if I don't talk about it again, it's like, who is actually going to find that? They have to be poking around my website.
You're creating work for them because you don't want to do it.
And it's like, oh, but if I actually just talk about the thing and say at the bottom of my newsletters, don't forget this is available. By the way, I wouldn't say it like that. I'd have much more tact, you know? Or maybe I would say, I don't know, don't forget, I don't know. But all I'm saying is if I don't remind them of the thing, I'm trusting they're going to find it on their own, and that is not actually going to work.
Yeah, and then the other couple of things that I will say kind of on the same topic. First of all, if you've been creating content for a really long time and you're like, a lot of times what I hear from people is like, oh my gosh, but I have to keep creating content. Like with my newsletter, I have to keep creating new content, or how am I going to create? Maybe right now, your job is actually not to create new content, but to make it easy for people that actually finds the content that you created. Because how many of us have created content and it just went off into the abyss and died? Like we don't have it living anywhere where people can easily find it. I am so like, this is definitely true for me. Sometimes I look at things podcast episodes that I did at one point or whatever, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I should be making some of these into blog posts and having them like really accessible on my homepage of my website. It's work for you. And the reason that you do it is because it's valuable to other people for them to not have to do the work because you did the work. For them to not have to do the work of finding the thing. Right?
Yeah.
And if you don't, they're just going to go and find the person who is making it easy for them to
find the thing,
consume their content.
Yep.
And finally, I think that one of the things that has come up, this has come up forever. I don't think that this is even a new thing, but I don't think that it's talked about that much. Part of your job as a service provider is to make the actual process of getting whatever the result is easy. If I can take a course that has 20 modules and workbooks and exercises and Q&A sessions and, add in all of the quote unquote value packed things that we're told we could add in, or I can take a 3-module course with none of that shit and I can get the same outcome, I want the 3-module course. I would love to not have to do the extra 17 modules of work to get to the same outcome. We really need to get away from this idea of trying to signal that our work is worth the money by including a bunch of stuff. And instead think about what would be the thing that would actually make the difference for people versus what is extraneous, not that important. How can you way simplify your offers to just make that difference for them and not include that other stuff? And then you can think about, like, if you're doing something that is, pre-recorded or something like that, and you're thinking, well, for some people it would be valuable. It's on you to create a design of that program where the people who need it can easily find it and the people who don't get distracted by it.
Would you be my business coach?
Sure. Would you be mine?
Um, um,
News. You kind of already are.
I'm like, I'll help you with your marketing, but like this business coaching thing, I think that's all you, dude.
I don't know about that.
I really appreciate your brain on this, seriously.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Right back at you, cats. Yeah, is that it?
I think that is all we wanted to say about this particular topic.
Yeah.
I mean, as a preface into a much more in-depth conversation about all the things we covered today, too. Like, we're going to talk about marketing next and, you know, and offers design and things of that nature, but like the theme of making it easier.
Stop thinking about more. Start thinking about tweaking the things that you're already doing to create ease for the people on the other side. It's not about more. No one wants more. I don't want more.
No, we have plenty of more.
I want less.
I want less.
Tarzan K, who I've been talking to you about because Tarzan K like is vocal about having been an active bro marketer and then realizing what she was doing and then leaving that and now being all about like consent-based marketing. One of the things that she said in some recent thing that I consumed of hers was, in your newsletter, if every single time that you send a newsletter, you're giving people another like, here's what you should be doing in your whatever, or here's a way to fix this, or right, because it seems valuable, what happens then is every time you show up in someone's inbox, you're telling them that they should be doing something else. And it is overwhelming. You're giving people homework every single time that you show up. And I was like, oh, right. I personally do not want to be reminded all the time of all of the things that I could be or should be doing that I don't have the capacity to do because I am so limited right now. There is value in storytelling.
Yes.
There's value in simply making like a concise point that might be impactful for people. There's value in being entertaining. Like there's so much value in and in other things aside from just throwing more at people.
Yes. And I think that goes for how you show up in a newsletter just as much as it goes for how you show up in Instagram.
Totally.
If we're constantly just on Instagram yelling about our work, not just saying like buy my work or work with me, but also like, you know, educate, carousel slide, educate, carousel slide, educate, carousel slide. What kind of relationship are we creating? What kind of energy are we creating? What kind of dynamic are we creating? Again, I think we're overcomplicating, and if we just make it freaking human, sometimes you show up and you don't teach, right? Sometimes you show up and you just share the workshop. Or sometimes you show up and you show up in a reel and it's you doing something goofy like making a sales page and then sitting back with a leather jacket on, you know?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Talk about making it easy, you know? Oh my god, you should see these floof chunks. Oh, they're beautiful. What are they? They're like Malamutes or something. There are two of them. They're so beautiful.
We could play two floofs and a chonk.
Two floofs and a chonk? How does that game work?
I don't know.
First, I shared that I listened to Justin Timberlake on the internet today. Apparently, people
really
are
like
surprised. I'm always and forever. Always
JT.
And forever JT.
I'm going to tell you something. That Tiny Desk concert did change my mind on Justin Timberlake.
There you go.
It did.
Yeah.
It's excellent.
Yeah, I think he's incredible.
And
yes,
he writes his own music.
Yeah, he's a good guy, you know? I mean, I don't know, actually.
Well, don't go too far because, listen, you never know.
You make the most
if you were stripped of all of the comforts and variety in your life and you had to pick, it's like never going to be a good answer, you know? My main concern is like, is it The Big Lebowski? Here's the thing about The Big Lebowski.
Okay.
First of all, that movie is hilarious. Second of all, I don't know how many times you've watched that movie. I have watched that movie so many times, and every single time that I watch it, I notice something else.
Mm-hmm.
The first It's one of those
But
movies.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but same with me for Honey, Rise Up and Dance,
that
really. I mean, I'm
you
not comparing the Coen brothers to whoever
I
made Honey, Rise Up and Dance.
I
Let's
know.
be let's be
I
clear.
know.
Okay,
But
please continue.
okay, but here is the tie-in to this episode. We are rethinking the idea of what makes something valuable.
Look at how smart you are. You're such a business coach thing to do right there, by the way.
Reframe. Right when you didn't think we were talking about business. Oh, surprise. Which is why it's like, you get like how long into the movie, and then it's like, who the fuck are the Knutsons?
Stop it. First of all, stop predicting that you're going to be depressed. You might be like fully liberated on this island.
Well,
You might just be like just ecstatic to be alone, basking in the fucking sun, you
I
know?
appreciate your optimism. I did just stomp into a puddle right in the screen, like the best dance movie. Like, just
Oh,
kidding.
yeah, it's always like water or sand. Like, seriously, this is a thing.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's another,
Yeah, I know. I
conversation for
know.
another podcast. Listening to the first episode, I was like, how many times did I use the word acknowledge? And partly because my thesaurus brain is like, name. Everybody uses the word name now. We're all saying, I just want a name. Anyways, I want to
Feels
acknowledge. That's my
important to name.